There have been a lot of fan discussions about who is the most pivotal character who had contributed to the Soul Society defeating the Quincy. Several names frequently prop up stating that the MVP of the 1000-Year Blood War arc is Mayuri. Some even mention Shunsui Kyoraku, and in certain online circles, Kinpachi's name is also proposed. Rightfully so, each of these characters have played a pivotal role in leading the Soul Society to victory. Mayuri's intervention had saved many lives by finding a cure for Giselle's zombification ability, as well as his numerous other ventures which were instrumental in aiding the Shinigami. On the other hand, you have Shunsui, who had demonstrated exceptional leadership and tactical acumen following Yamamoto's death. He was exactly what the Gotei 13 had needed in order to defeat the Quincy. Meanwhile, Kinpachi's tremendous power had stopped characters like Gremmy from causing havoc within the Soul Society. Therefore, it is reasonable to view all of these characters as vital contributors. However, there is one standalone character whose contributions during the 1000-Year Blood War arc seems to be consistently underestimated by fans. Some have even claimed that he was the least deserving of his position as a war potential, a claim with which I strongly disagree. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the various ways that Kisuke Urahara has had an invaluable role that he had played during Bleach's final arc, and why he was the most important asset that the Soul Society had on their side. I'd even argue that the Shinigami's victory in the war against the Quincy would have been impossible without Urahara. In order to fully comprehend the role that Urahara had played during the final arc, I've divided his role into two primary aspects. Firstly, the role that he had played as a combatant, and secondly, his essential role as the backbone of the Soul Society's defenses. I'm going to be delving into each of these two roles throughout this video, as I want to begin by exploring the substantial part that he had played as a crucial support system for the Soul Society in their hour of need, as well as analyzing how the narrative utilizes Urahara's character, followed by examining his specific actions that he had taken within the story arc. Kubo constantly depicts Urahara as one of the most intellectually gifted characters in the Bleach universe. As an extremely brilliant scientist who has achieved multiple scientific breakthroughs within the story, he was the first known individual to avert the soul suicide of a Quincy soul, a phenomenon as natural as gravity itself. Now, this theme of challenging established universal laws to feed his inventive spirit continues to be a hallmark of his character. Another instance of such an accomplishment was his pioneering effort in harmonizing hollow energies within a Shinigami, thereby enabling them to utilize the powers of hollows, a phenomenon previously believed to be unattainable. The number of remarkable inventions that Urahara has brought into existence will be enough to fill this entire video, so it's best that we progress further onto another point. One might assume that a character of Urahara's intellect will be removed from the nuances of warfare. However, Urahara defies all such expectations. His unparalleled scientific acumen is matched only by his outstanding strategic aptitude. Not only is he a skilled fighter and a Shinigami, but he's also a master strategist, who some may argue is even able to outmaneuver the likes of Sosuke Aizen, a character who acknowledged that Urahara was significantly more intelligent and had managed to outwit him during the Battle of Fate Karakura Town. Urahara's tactical prowess was such that it had earned him a spot amongst the 5 great war powers in Yuhobaku's evaluation of the most dangerous Shinigami. With such a revered character embedded into the world's lore, it's always a challenge to ensure that the character's actions measure up to their reputation. The final arc of Bleach amplifies this challenge. So how does Urahara perform during the 1000-Year Blood War arc? Would Mayuri have been more deserving of the war potential designation, as most fans believe he had contributed more to the final arc? So let's delve into Urahara's role during the Quincy War, beginning with his actions in chapter 486. Following Ichigo's battle against Iban, he encounters Nell, who briefs him on all of the recent developments going on within Hueco Mundo. Anticipating irregularities within the Soul Society, Urahara had already been on high alert. He creates a Garganta for Ichigo and the others to travel into Hueco Mundo. This leads to our primary introduction to the invading Quincy army. Thanks to Urahara's help, it had resulted in Ichigo and the others rescuing Pesce and Dondachaka, laying the ground groundwork for the eventual alliance that the Shinigami would have with the Arrancar, which proves to be a valuable asset in the near future. This action also provides Urahara with the opportunity to comprehend the functionality of the Quincy's medallion by examining Killge's medallion. This sets the stage for Urahara's next major contribution to the storyline, which in my opinion might have been the greatest deciding factor in the Quincy War. Now, I'm referring to Urahara's groundbreaking work in devising a method to restore the Shinigami's Bankai. This is a plot point that I really appreciated because it integrates Urahara's 100 years worth of experience into the interactions between different types of souls and effectively applying that knowledge within the narrative. This achievement notably reinstates the Bankai of Hitsugaya and Byakuya, who would later play crucial roles in halting Gerard and the untold destruction that he could have unleashed. But even more importantly, thanks to Urahara's actions, it had prevented any further Bankai from being stolen. By infusing the Bankai of all Shinigami with the Soul Invasion pills, Urahara not only restored the stolen Bankai to their rightful owners, but he had also prevented additional Shinigami's Bankai from being snatched. This accomplishment should not be underestimated, given that many of the Shinigami's future triumphs in battle were reliant upon their ability to use their own Bankai. Furthermore, Urahara is the architect behind the creation of the Reiatsu Gate to the Soul King's palace. It would be somewhat unfair to neglect that the gate's full functionality were only possible thanks to Mayuri's Reiatsu amplifier, and while it's true that the gate wouldn't have been required had Ukitake not met his end, it is nevertheless a remarkable achievement. This is yet another instance within the story where Urahara was able to accomplish something considered to be impossible. The only known method of accessing the Soul King's palace was via the Oken and the Tenshuren, yet Urahara had found a way to create a gate to the Soul King's palace that didn't necessitate the use of the Oken. It would also be inaccurate to credit their ability to enter the Soul King's palace solely to characters wearing Oken clothing. The story doesn't suggest that Oken clothing act as a key into the Soul King's palace. Only thing that we know about Oken clothing is that they have exceedingly high defensive abilities. The creation of the Reiatsu gates were very impressive, but what's even more remarkable is that he was able to come up with this idea under the extreme pressure that he was in. Now, despite all of this, you may be wondering just why these three things Urahara did were so important to the Soul Society's victory. In response to this, let's play a game. What would have happened if Urahara didn't do any of these things? Well, firstly, considering what might have transpired if Urahara hadn't escorted Ichigo to Hueco Mundo, on a surface level this would have been a very easily remedied issue. Nell would have just taken them to Hueco Mundo anyway, but unfortunately that wouldn't be everything. Urahara's presence within Hueco Mundo is what allows Ichigo to leave, starting from Urahara's sneak attack on Killge, which weakens him long enough for Urahara to reopen the Garganta to the Soul Society. Killge still succeeds in sealing Ichigo with the jail, but without Urahara around, Ichigo would most likely end up being stranded on Hueco Mundo, since he's the only one who had known how to use a Garganta in order to reach the Soul Society. But even more importantly, Urahara's absence would have prevented him from gaining Killge's medallion, which links up very nicely with our next point. What would have happened if Urahara didn't create the Shadow Invasion pills? Well, you can imagine that no character in the story would be able to possess a Bankai. Essentially, every Shinigami will likely lose their significant battles. Byakuya, for instance, would live through his fight with Aznod only to perish at the hands of Gerard. Hitsugaya wouldn't even end up facing off against Gerard because Kangdu would have eliminated him during the second invasion. Similarly, Soifon would have fallen against BG9, and while Komamura may have still obtained his humanization technique, whether if he could have defeated Bambietta with only his Shikai is really hard to say. The real predicament wouldn't end with the characters who had their Bankai stolen, but also with those who hadn't lost theirs yet. Almost every character who had used their Bankai would have had it stolen before they could employ their trump cards. Lil would have ended up killing Shunsui long before he had the chance to hand to Nanao the Shinken Hakyoken. Mayuri would have perished before Nemu could come to his rescue, and Kimpachi would have been defeated by Gerard without the power of his Bankai. Each of these characters was crucial to the victory of the Soul Society, and none of them would have been able to perform their roles to the fullest extent without Urahara finding a way to safeguard their Bankai from being stolen. This alone should substantiate why Urahara is undeniably pivotal in discussions about who is the most influential within the Soul Society's victory during the final arc. Lastly, without the gate, the Gote 13 would have never made it to the Soul King's palace. Ichigo and the Karakura gang would have been outnumbered and overwhelmed by the Sternritter elite without the Gote 13's support. So it's not even about having reached Yuhabak, because Hashward and Lil would have annihilated all of them. It's virtually impossible to conceive how they could have emerged victorious in this war without Urahara's backing. However, despite being the prime reason that the Soul Society had even stood a chance, Urahara was also playing the role of a combatant during the Thousand Year Blood War. In regards to his role as a fighter, many fans may be quick to dismiss the part that he had played. After all, there are many more characters who perform that role to an even greater extent. Take Kinpachi for example, whose unmatched power was considerably more useful than Urahara's, and he is not the only one. Quite a few Shinigami contributed much more to the battle with their strength. But even having said all of this, I think that fans really do underestimate the power that Urahara had brought to the table. And the reason why this gets overlooked is mainly because Urahara only gets one major fight during the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and it's his battle against Asin. So instead of going over his fight with Asin, I'd want to spend this time explaining just how massive of a threat Asin was to the Soul Society, and why it was such a huge deal that Urahara had taken him down at the crucial moment that he did. Because just like Urahara, Asin is a character whose power is severely underrated because of how godly the other Shoot Starfall's power seemed in comparison. But to tell the truth, Asin was an opponent who almost every Bleach character would have struggled against. I believe that he really would have given some strong fighters a run for their money if he had fought them instead of Urahara, but I'll talk more about this in a future power scaling video. His ridiculously powerful abilities made Asin an incredibly difficult opponent to battle against. There's of course his annoying ability to reduce the immunity of anyone that he had fought to any given substance, and if you're struggling to understand why this power would be annoyingly hard to fight against, then just imagine having to fight someone while having to suffer an allergic reaction to oxygen. One would be quick to assume that the right solution to fighting a person with a power like this would be to kill them quicker than they kill you, but therein would lie another problem, mainly being the fact that Asin doesn't only actively poison his opponents as he fights, but he also gradually becomes more and more immune to the powers that his enemies possess until they cannot hurt him anymore. And this already annoying power that he has is further supported by Asin's extremely high endurance, which allows him to survive multiple life-threatening attacks. This allows him to stay alive long enough to attack and almost kill Uetsu Nimaya after the latter had slashed his throat. This also allowed him to stay alive long enough to even have a conversation after having his heart ripped out and crushed by Grimmjow. Such an ability would quickly make him a serious challenge for any character whose powers required continuous exposure to their Reiatsu. This covers a wider range of abilities than you may realize. Powers like Kyokasuigetsu or Shunsui's Bankai would never have been effective against Asin. This is primarily because the enormous amounts of Reiatsu required to maintain Kyokasuigetsu's illusions would be sufficient exposure to grant him immunity. Of course, this doesn't suggest that Asin could defeat Aizen, but rather illustrates the extraordinary potency of Asin's Shrift and the extent of the damage that he could inflict with it. Asin was an opponent who took on Yoruichi and Yushiro and had bested both of them. Yoruichi was no pushover, and in terms of raw strength, she should have been equal to or even more powerful than Urahara. Yet even with her powers including her electrifying cat form, it wasn't enough to overcome Asin. Additionally, even his most casual attacks could defeat the likes of Ichigo with his true Shikai, and a much more robust Grimmjow. Had it not been for his aversion to killing his enemies while they were weakened by his poison, he could have annihilated Ichigo and Grimmjow. In all honesty, this is really insane to even imagine. But Urahara, though cleverly using his ability to restructure anything, manages to frighten Asin into fighting him in the air, enabling Grimmjow to ambush him from behind in the sky. This series of events could only have been facilitated by Urahara's Bankai abilities, which were able to bypass Asin's ability to acquire immunity to any Reiatsu. You may be wondering, just how was Urahara able to continuously affect Asin with his Bankai? I believe that the answer to this lies in the fact that Urahara was able to restructure his Reiatsu completely in order to allow him to be able to hurt Asin continuously. This is why Asin had quickly realized that he wouldn't be able to fight him and decided to switch to attacking him from afar. Unfortunately, this action had played right into Urahara's hands, which then allowed him to enact his plan of having Grimmjow take him down while he had taken cover in the air. I'm confident that the true danger of Asin's powers will be explored deeper in my upcoming power scaling video series, because Urahara having defeated Asin was a huge feat which had saved the Soul Society from the devastating powers of Asin. Now, after everything that I've spoken about, what do you think about the role that Urahara had played during the final arc of Bleach? Do you think that he contributed the most in the Shinigami winning the Quincy War? Or do you think that that other characters had contributed more than Urahara? I'd love to know all of your thoughts in the comments, and if I've forgotten anything about Urahara's role in the 1000 Year Blood War arc, then definitely let me know. Lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video.
If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.